Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to call to order this public hearing markup on the Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety. I am Councilmember Brooke Pinto, Chairwoman of the committee. Today is Monday, March 25th. The time is now 2:10 p.m. We are conducting this markup in person in room 412 of the John A. Wilson Building and streaming on the DC Council's website and YouTube at CM Brooke Pinto. We have a quorum today with the presence of at-large Councilmember Christina Henderson and Ward 6 Councilmember Charles Allen. We have two items on the agenda today. First, Bill 25-44, the Vulnerable Youth Guardianship Protection Amendment Act of 2024. And second, proposed resolution 25-591, the District of Columbia Sentencing Commission Sean Holihan confirmation resolution of 2024. First, Bill 25-44, the Vulnerable Youth Guardianship Protection Amendment Act of 2024, was introduced by Council members Nadeau, Bonds, Robert White, Gray, Allen, and me on January 19th, 2023. The committee held a hearing on the bill on June 8th of 2023, and I want to thank Councilmember Nadeau and her team for introducing this important bill. This legislation addresses an urgent problem. There is currently an inconsistency between district and federal law that undercuts critical support to immigrant youth who have suffered from abuse, abandonment, or neglect. This bill creates a legal class of vulnerable youth, unmarried citizens that are at least 18 but are younger than 21, and authorizes Superior Court judges to appoint guardians for these youth and make other determinations that would allow them to apply for a special immigrant juvenile status, a special federal humanitarian visa that covers those who are abused, neglected, or abandoned as immigrant youth under the age of 21. Those granted this special status would be authorized to work, maintain a social security number, receive assistance for housing and education, and eventually apply for lawful permanent residency. This is necessary because, as matters currently stand, the Superior Court lacks authority over unmarried non-citizens who are between the ages of 18 and 21. The court thus lacks a legal mechanism to appoint guardians for these youth, as is currently contemplated by federal law, and to issue the orders necessary to allow a number of eligible youth to apply for this special immigrant juvenile status. Even though the federal level individuals can be granted this status until the age of 21. So this legislation fixes that problem. Because of the urgency of this problem, I moved and the council passed an emergency version of this bill on July 11th, 2023, Bill 25-385, the Vulnerable Youth Guardianship Protection Emergency Amendment Act of 2023. A temporary version and congressional review emergency version of this bill have also been passed. To ensure that this important fix to our laws remain permanently in place, a permanent version of this bill is now before us. I'll note that while the committee print largely retains the language of the introduced and emergency versions of the bill, it does include some relatively minor clarifying changes. The most substantive change we have made in the print is to eliminate filing fees for guardianship petitions. This is consistent with best practices in jurisdictions like Washington and New York, which have no filing fees for guardianship petitions, given the financial constraints that vulnerable youth might find themselves facing. Eliminating filing fees is also consistent with the district's policy in the Domestic Violence Division of our Superior Courts. I do want to take a moment to highlight why I think this bill is so important. Immigrant youth without the critical supports of guardianship are particularly vulnerable to abuses such as human trafficking and housing insecurity. It is federally estimated that more than 1/3 of unaccompanied immigrant youth coming to the United States have already reached 17 years of age. Absent council action, a class of vulnerable district immigrant youth will be unable to seek legal relief afforded to them by federal law and will be unable to seek the care and support of a guardianship appointment while living in the district. Advocates have testified that until and unless this mismatch between district and federal law is corrected, organizations will have to turn away several youth each month because of the ongoing misalignment in district and federal law, and that even eligible youth close to the cutoff age of 18 find it difficult to obtain legal representation for speedy filing. Last, guardians constitute invaluable care and support for vulnerable youth as they pursue their course, especially for immigrant youth who will be petitioning for special immigrant juvenile status and who will need support and guidance in negotiating with our legal system. Immigrant youth, one of the most vulnerable populations in the district, thus stand to benefit immensely from this law. With that, I now move the print and report of Bill 25-44 with leave for staff to make technical, editorial, and conforming changes. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All members signify favor of this bill by saying aye.
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 Aye. With that, the measure passes unanimously. We will now move on to proposed resolution 25-591, the District of Columbia Sentencing Commission, Sean Holihan confirmation resolution of 2024. The resolution was introduced on January 2nd of this year by Chairman Mendelson at the request of Mayor Bowser. It would confirm Mr. Holihan's nomination to serve on the commission for a term ending on July 2nd, 2026. The Sentencing Commission was created in 2006 for the purpose of producing voluntary sentencing guidelines for judges in the district in order to ensure greater consistency and fairness in sentencing. The Sentencing Commission is also broadly responsible for analyzing sentencing data, policies, and practices, both in the district and across jurisdictions. This includes tracking case-by-case sentencing and compliance with the sentencing guidelines. Finally, the Commission produces recommendations to the courts, the council, and executive agencies on enhancing the fairness and effectiveness of criminal sentencing in the district. Sean Holihan is a Ward 1 resident who currently works as the state legislative director at Giffords, a national organization established by former Congressperson Gabby Giffords, dedicated to combating gun violence through state legislation. Prior to that, he worked at the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, or RAIN, as a policy manager for federal and state campaigns. RAIN is a well-known national nonprofit that works to promote research and policy changes to reduce rape, abuse, and incest. Mr. Holihan's work at RAIN involves sustained work in government affairs. This work was preceded by a directorship in advocacy at NARAL Pro-Choice, another national nonprofit that advocates and lobbies for the protection of reproductive freedoms and women's health. Last, Mr. Holihan has past experience as chief of staff for a state legislator at the Virginia General Assembly. Mr. Holihan currently serves as an ANC commissioner for 1B02 and recently finished a two-year term on the Concealed Pistol Licensing Review Board. The committee held a public roundtable on March 21st, 2024 on Mr. Holihan's confirmation resolution, during which time Mr. Holihan spoke about the knowledge he had gained from serving the district on the Concealed Pistol Licensing Review Board and about his sensitivity to social and political impacts of the law that he had acquired from his career in legislative advocacy and in government affairs. Based on the hearing, I believe that Mr. Holihan's willingness to learn from the Commission's fellow members and his awareness of the interplay between local and federal views on sentencing practices and the federal legislative dynamics will contribute an important perspective on the Commission. I'm hopeful that Mr. Holihan will bring an independent perspective to the Commission that takes into account the complex realities of the district's criminal justice system and the important role that sentencing plays. With that, I now move the print and report of PR 25-591 with leave for staff to make technical, editorial, and conforming changes. Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair, I just want to ask a question
Councilor Anderson.
in terms of the makeup of the commission going forward. Once we confirm Mr. Holihan, will all the vacancies be filled?
No, there will remain 2 additional vacancies. One, both due to the Secure DC expansion. There will be an additional vacancy for the mayor to fill. She will now have 2 total. And there will be 1 additional vacancy for the council to fill that has to be a victim of violent crime that we will be able to fill. So there'll be 2 additional positions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor of this resolution, please signify by saying aye.
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 Great. With that, the resolution is passed unanimously. There being no further business for the committee today, the time is now 2:20 p.m. and we are